Nope, too late. Go time now. No more bathroom breaks, guys.
I just want to say, you did a very good job. So good job. It's that thing where you're actually kind of smart. Things you say make you sound dumb.
Yeah, we both do that.
What's that called?
Nope.
Yeah, but you're a little different, Dad.
Stop saying sure! Oh, it drives me crazy!
Are you seeing clear? Are you seeing clear?
I think most people just ignore the tough question. This isn't Minecraft. This is real life.
You are hilarious.
That was not the dog, Dad. That was you.
Yeah, to solve this, we have to completely ignore the main problem.
That makes literally no sense to me. I just want to die.
And that, my friend, is one of my favorite things about you.
All right, so yes, man, such a good story, Paul. I had to interrupt Paul because he was telling such a great story and we weren't recording. Oh, Sarah. Okay, so behind the scenes here, Sarah's bringing over the cakes that she made. Unbelievable. Obviously, we'll talk about it on the show, but these are so cool, and I'm going to save all my adjectives for the episode. Paul, is this your first time as a guest on a podcast?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, it is. I was just... What's that? Hate glitter?
Sir. Remember your intro?
Oh, no. Sure.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I was
Sure is a passive-aggressive, I give up, but you're wrong. That's what that is. When somebody says... Paul, when somebody says to me, sure, if I make an argument, they made an argument and I make an argument, and they walk away and they go, sure, yeah. It's a complete dismissal of the original point. That's what it is. It's just like, yeah, sure. I hate it. Stop saying sure.
Okay.
Driving me crazy. I also put an auto-tune on that when I said that in the intro. I auto-tuned it and then did a bunch of other processing. Sarah, can you check and make sure that one is red in the corner? And then could you plug it in? Because old Doofus here didn't plug it in, and it's going to stop recording halfway.
Like a cranberry red.
Yep, not white. That didn't change anything.
Circle?
Yeah, red circle.
Yeah, we're red.
We recording.
And speaking of your intro, we loved your intro.
Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
And we don't know how you put it together
Well,
because it seems so random,
yeah.
but it works and is like entertaining. In the word delightful, it's delightful.
Thank you. And then you get into the show, and it's not delightful. It's everything else. No, what? So we'll start the show here in a minute, but what's your thoughts on the intro? So you said delightful. What were you thinking? Like you said, we don't know how you do it. What does that mean? Like, what were your processes?
It's such a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
Like you're doing a show about, oh man, I'm drawing a blank.
Sarah, you can jump in too.
What's the
like entrepreneurship and problem solving and those sort of things.
What's the name of it?
Renaissance Radio.
Yeah.
Renaissance Radio.
So you're about Renaissance.
Yeah.
So you would think the intro would be about being a visionary
Yeah.
and like really on point. And then it's your kids talking and saying random things.
Yeah.
It's so
and
catchy.
it's so delightful.
You know what's funny?
And it cheers me up every time I hear it.
I actually, when I tell people that, we're recording a podcast, I always introduce them to your intro.
Oh, is
and
that right?
They're like, yeah, that's so cool. I'm like,
I
yeah,
did that
that's
in like
pretty
a
cool.
day. I ordered this stuff. Here's what happened. I ordered this stuff and I had no content, no episodes. So I'm like, well, I got to make an intro. So the kids and I talked about some things that would sum their dad up, like normal conversations that we would have, or, just stuff that was like so obviously daddy and the kids. And then I also asked a couple of very specific questions to my parents and some other people that I've worked with and Harley. And what I did was I took little catchphrases from common statements that are made when we interact. And so we're going to listen to the intro right now, and then we'll get into it. It's so funny. Hey, welcome to Renaissance Radio. I'm your host, Jeremy. We are broadcasting from the new lunar station out on Mars, and this is Paul and Sarah Mann. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi. So here's what I want you to do. Sarah, can you give a podcast intro of Paul, like as if you're really hyping him up? He's getting ready to get on stage. What do you think? Give us the bullet point awesomeness of him. Besides his dashing handsomeness and charming demeanor, what else?
This is Paul. He's a great guy. I love him. He's just a really great husband, dad. He does the dishes without complaining. I don't know.
That's a character thing. That's like, there's like 100 books written on doing dishes without complaining. There's like several areas of your marriage that improve when you do that. That's no small thing, Paul. All right. So Paul's taken, happily married. And now, Paul, that we've heard great things about you, let's hear great things about Sarah. This is unprepared, by the way. Literally, we've never talked about doing this. But as I talk to these two, I know for a fact they have great things to say about each other because they're always saying great things about each other. So, Paul.
So,
And remember, it's only an hour. So I know
Okay.
you could talk for
All
over
right.
an hour on her greatness.
I almost look at myself as a pretty average guy. And Sarah is this beautiful, artistic, smart, musical, creative person who fell in love with me. She fell in love with me first,
It's
which
true.
is pretty awesome. And
What a brag that was, right?
I know.
For you were just like,
average guy in this beautiful bombshell. Did I say beautiful? Amazing woman fell in love with me, which is pretty cool.
that's awesome. First of all, that's nonsense. You guys are both fantastic and amazing.
Actually,
I do
did,
the dishes.
I
do
did
the
think he
dishes
was.
without complaining.
He had a
Great guy.
Which
damaged
is why she
brain.
fell in
you
love
got
with
great
me.
guy. Yeah.
I did think, but when I first met him, that he had suffered brain damage, and
Which is like you were kind of drawn to him for that a little bit. That was somebody that
Not at
like,
first it took
Yeah.
a little while to realize
this is a
he
theme
wasn't.
of my friends. Like, no joke. Like, I was talking to Harley the other day, and he says regularly, and his wife will hear him say it, like, she thinks he might have some difficulty, some
Mhm.
mental difficulty.
Yeah.
So what's going on there? These great wives and these guys. I've seen nothing but intelligence from you.
He's very smart.
What was the early days? Like, what happens in the beginning that you would think that maybe he had some limitations? Is
Well-
this real? Did you actually?
Yes. No, I talked to my roommate and I was
How did
like,
we end
were
up here?
so we were doing a Christian internship and I was like talking to my roommate, like, is Paul like all there? Because we were out like preaching the gospel and he had this sense of humor, like that made me think that he
Oh.
just wasn't all there. He sees a squirrel and he's like, squirrel, and he runs
So
after
you had
it. and-
transcendent humor is what was really happening. Your humor was hard to decode because you were so ahead of your time.
Yes, I was trying to make people laugh, and instead, I had the most beautiful girl in the internship think I was, what's the word?
Yeah, we don't have to find the word today.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's amazing. And then at some point you fell in love with him. So there had to
Yeah.
have been a change there. No, there doesn't have to be. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. What happened then? When did you fall in
Well,
love with
first
him? What
I
was the moment?
realized-
Was there a moment or a season?
It was kind of a season. I don't know. We just hung out, did our internship thing, studied the Bible, and just kind of realized he's a really genuine person, and that, I'm probably a little brain damaged too, but realized he wasn't to the extent that I had thought he was.
He was just different.
Yeah, and then he realized he needed to change his sense of humor. Is the way he
You changed for her. You were smitten.
slightly, not really, not
You
too
were
much.
smitten.
Did you notice how she said brain damage too?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So instead of realizing that, oh, Paul isn't that brain damaged, we're all just a little brain damaged.
She just brought herself to you. You didn't come up to her. She brought herself to you. That's awesome. What a weird story. Perfect for Renaissance Radio. I have known you guys quite some time, and I think Sarah and I have similar timelines that are separate from one another in the sense that like we've had struggles in our life, and as we all have, and we met back up at the tail end of some struggles as a family, and you guys started coming to the church that we attended, and it was awesome. And then in a similar fashion, fast forwarding, a lot of victories too, not just struggles, but some struggles and then victories. And fast forward, now I'm like 6 months in and I'm starting a podcast. I don't know anything about it. And I had some experience in some of the parts of the podcast, but certainly overestimated how those would translate because it's been difficult, but also very rewarding. And then you have Mannzy cakes, which is this thing that is, I'm just going to summarize it and then we'll talk about it in depth, is remarkable. Like you have found this talent you have that's tied to this passion that you have that is exactly the kind of thing that I want to celebrate at Renaissance. It's the whole point is like these amazing things that people do that maybe don't have a place quite yet. You know what I mean? But you're doing this amazing, amazing thing. And you you'd baked before,
Yes.
right? But at the same time, is there a similarity to that story of just like, okay, I'm doing this now. And it's just like explodes into this monstrous, like, what is this?
Yeah. To backtrack a little bit, I did. I've always enjoyed baking. Kind of funny story. My dad, I almost poisoned him with expired lemon bars from the box, but just want to put it out there. I make everything from scratch now, so we're all
Yeah.
good there.
Poisoning was from the early days. You haven't done that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've come a long way.
that's right.
But yeah, no, I wasn't even planning on having this Mannzy Cakes thing, but I made a couple cakes for my kids for their birthdays and put it out there on Facebook. And somebody was like, hey, can you make me a baby shower cake? And your wife asked me, can you make me my son's birthday cake? And
Whoa. Hold on. We're going too fast
Okay.
here. And here's why. Sarah's a very humble person. I can't even, I just have to stop like for a moment of silence to talk about this Hobbit cake, this cake she made for Harland.
Not Hobbit, Hagrid's Hut.
This is what I'm talking about. If you're on YouTube,
Oh,
you see me
Brian-
pointing
Brian
at
did
her.
have
I
Hobbit
said
cake.
Hobbit, and she goes, no. She did the market research. She made things where, Paul, can you jump in here and make sure we don't skim over the fact that she quickly made a Hagrid cake? Like, unbelievable.
Yeah, so Ashley asked her if for your son Harlan,
Yep.
Sarah could make a Hagrid's hut. And Sarah was impassioned about this cake. And she probably put, 100 man hours?
I
40
have no
man
idea.
hours? Crazy.
It's a labor of
Making
love.
everything to detail to match a picture that you found from the film.
Actually, yeah, I watched a little clip and kind of screenshotted. Okay, this is kind of what Hagrid's Hut looks like up close.
And up to this point, she made 3 nice custom cakes in her life, all for our kids. And then she's jumping into making a very complex cake using skills that she didn't previously have. And she made a beautiful cake.
It was
You want-
unbelievable. It's like breathtaking. I mean, this is one of those things that, I've experienced in the photography world. The expectation of any artist is to make things that are consistent to expectation and hopefully a little above. But you don't take big swings and miss. You can't do that as a professional artist. I've had just a couple photos of hundreds of weddings and thousands and thousands and thousands of photos. I've had just a couple that people stop and look at. Just a couple that people go, whether they know the couple or not, they go, wow, something special happened right there. It's very rare. It doesn't even happen every wedding. And I consider myself pretty skilled. You can't force it. That cake was like that. It was like you gave this cake and it just wasn't a cake. It was like this thing and we're just all staring at it. We're just like, we couldn't take our eyes off of it. And that's like one in, how many had you made at that point?
3.
Yeah, that's 33% at that point. I mean, just a remarkable, and that was kind of my original question was, what on earth happens to make somebody get that passionate that quickly? I can empathize because I'm like watching hundreds of hours of podcasters and looking at gear and learning about technique and watching masterclasses and trying to get better. And I can just tell that happened for you too, because you have a natural ability, but that doesn't get you there. Natural ability does not get you there. So what was that experience of like, when did it take hold of you? What was that like?
Yeah. I was nervous at first. I had never done anything like it, but I think a little bit of it was, I know you guys are awesome. You're creative. And I'm like, I want to make Harlan's birthday, not Hagrid, Harlan's birthday.
Make
really
a Harlan cake
special.
for Hagrid would be sick too.
Yeah,
That'd be
you
great.
guys are great. And I wanted to do something special for
Thank
you. And I don't know, like it kind of just woke up this creative side of me. Like there's so many things I could do with this. There's so many details that I could interweave, like Aragog, the spider, Buckbeak, like you got Hagrid sitting on a bench. I even made like a little bowl with like some vegetable stew for him. I don't even know if that was in the book, but there's just like so many
I can imagine
fun
him
little
eating it, though.
details.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to really zoom in even further because you started with, I made a really cool cake, and then Paul was able to bring out what actually happened. I want to go even further for our listeners who are artists, who are just like maybe doing what they're asked a little bit, like they're doing art, so they're illustrating or they're doing whatever, but they haven't hit that moment where they're like, oh my gosh, and like dunked themselves in it like you did. Can you describe, was that cake somewhere around the moment of dunking for you? You were
That
just
was
like,
a major dunking.
what was that? What were the attributes of that job specifically that lined up perfectly? So maybe we can recreate some for people to try to find themselves. What were some of the things that went, this plus this plus this plus this plus this made it perfect?
Well, I think part of it was I saw a challenge. I had never done a lot of this stuff. And, I was like, this is an opportunity to kind of see how far I can go and what I can do. And I'm just going to really push my limits. Like, I didn't charge you,
No.
much for it.
Thanks
I probably
for that,
made
by the
like
way.
2 cents an
No,
hour.
you lost money on that for sure.
But it was like, what can I do? And, I have these 2 little kids. Like, I feel kind of guilty, if I were to just make something for myself, but I'm making something for someone else that's going to bring them a lot of joy. And so that kind of was a lot of, that was encouragement for me to just put everything into it. And also I really like the theme. Like, I'm like you, Lord of the Rings is my all-time favorite movie, but Harry Potter is pretty cool too.
From fan fiction standpoint, Harry Potter is a really good fan fiction for Lord of the Rings. I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, I just lost half my audience just now saying that, especially anybody under 25.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was something that I really, I enjoyed the books, enjoyed the movies, and
So
it's cool.
subject matter, and so far what I've heard is subject matter, something you are passionate about and curious about and excited about, mixed with a willingness to go however far it needed to take you,
Right.
with a commitment that you had to get it done. Those combinations. Was there anything else involved in that you were just like, man, this freed me up? Because I could just sense from you that you're like freed up on that job. There's something about like, whoa, this is Mannzy Cakes.
Yeah, I think I was making it also for a friend, so I kind of had, didn't have a certain level of expectations. Like later on, I made a cake for a professional golfer, and I was kind of like, there's a lot of pressure on that, and I had to make it, perfect, just in my own mind. And for you, it's like, I can kind of do whatever I want and see, where this goes, because you're my friends, and I'm not charging you,
Right.
$200.
I kind of feel like I've got to pay you more now. I think that's the thing. No, I'm kidding. So would you say it's fair to say that the combination of high expectations for yourself, but not as high expectations for the client, was a nice feature for you? Something that you could go as far as you wanted, but we were going to be happy with whatever.
Yeah, that's one thing where I do appreciate when clients give me a little bit of wiggle room, like, hey, I want this themed cake. And I do, I like when people show me pictures. I want exactly that. That's cool. That kind of makes
hold
my...
on. Yeah. Is it cool? Is it cool when somebody wants you to trace a design? Be honest.
It's not as
okay,
cool.
so what she's saying, probably, tell me if I'm wrong, is she won't be mad at you if you do that. Thank you for the offer, but that's not your passion.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. There was, somebody gave me a picture and I modified it a little bit. So I didn't do exactly what they wanted. So I always kind of do my own thing, which, it's just how it goes. But so just the freedom to kind of explore and do what I want with it.
That's really cool. And I think that's replicatable. I think that resonates with me on the show. I have my expectations for myself are to it's me as a consumer, and I'm a really difficult consumer. So when I listen to my show, there's things I don't like about it yet, and I want to get better. I have really high expectations of myself, but my consumers are not freaking out. Like, they're okay. They're understanding. They're not relying on this for their livelihood or anything. So that's good. That's okay. That fits. Also, it's subject matter that I'm really interested in. I'm calling people like you guys and other creative professional friends to try to get them, and I want to learn about them and be curious. And so I think that method, if you're listening and you're trying to think, okay, I want to take this hobby to the next level, I think the thought of like what Sarah said is, what would I do if I could do anything? Maybe find a client that doesn't have crazy high expectations, but could maybe cover your costs, and then make a commitment that you're going to get it done so that you actually do it. That's a pretty good formula, I think. That's pretty good. So, Paul, any thoughts on that?
One thing I appreciate about Sarah's cake making is she takes something very common, birthday cakes. Every birthday has birthday cakes. You sing happy birthday. It's a very common thing. And then she puts an uncommon spin on it. And we had talked about cakes, you and I, before her cake making, and you talked about thoughtfulness.
That I did?
Yes.
Oh.
Where you have someone who has a thoughtful idea to get someone a cake, and they have a certain payoff. Sarah has a payoff for creating something thoughtful, and then there's a third party which they appreciate receiving that thoughtful gift.
That's true.
And Sarah gets to do that. And one of the best illustrations of that is her Mickey Mouse cake. And I want her to share the Mickey Mouse cake. I know you've seen it and you were blown away.
This is a shared relationship. So I want to tell you up front real quick, his mom messaged me early on. This has nothing to do with the cake. His mom messaged me early on, hey, I know you know technical stuff. He wants to get into illustration. He really wants to do this. What does he get? And so we were talking about iPads and Apple Pencils and what the right thing would be. So I'm like emotionally invested in this kid's success. And then fourth person payoff, right? I get to come in and see that Sarah, completely separate from that, did this unbelievable, thoughtful. I keep saying words like unbelievable and incredible. What I'm saying by this is, you look at it and you go, I can't believe she cared so much about my thing or their thing. Like she takes on their passion, like their thing they're passionate about, and compounds it. And there's something really special about being able to then consume it together. Like it's just something really neat. So, so this kid DJ, I don't think comes from an artistic circle of friend. I think he's kind of in a new space. I could be wrong on that. And his mom called you and bring, take it away.
Yeah, she's like, I want to make him could you make him a cake? And this is something that's really helpful. She said, he's interested in animation. He does animation practices every day. He loves Disney, loves the theme parks, just kind of threw out a few things of his that he liked. And so I kind of thought about it, and I was like, well, I'm going to make him something that combines all those elements. And I asked her for details. I said, hey, could you send me some pictures of his tools that he uses to draw, maybe even some of his drawings, if that's okay. And so she gave me some photos, and I kind of went off of that and incorporated that into the cake, which was really cool because, I know the Conants, they're really sweet family. And, I know DJ, but I didn't know this about him. And, because of this cake, I learned that about him, and I was able to kind of just appreciate that even more about him and incorporate that and make something
And
special
then
for
there
him.
was a cake. And I have to have you describe your thoughtfulness. I'm going to give you a pause for a second and let you then or ask you to tell us about the cake, because this is, and I don't think you're being this. Sarah's actually this humble. She's not. There's no fake humility here. But when you say, "Oh," and then I made him a cake, you did so much more than that. It was so amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And Sarah, just to let the listeners understand, everything in her cakes is edible. So she has to make this really delicious, creative, thoughtful cake, and it needs to be edible.
It needs to taste okay, not
Tastes
make
great.
you sick. It tastes great. All of it tastes great. That's the idea.
That's my hope.
Yeah. So you don't have any fakies. Like everything you can
No.
pop in your mouth and go, "That was delicious." That's rare.
Well,
For the most part, yeah.
like I make the pencils out of fondant and all that. You probably wouldn't want to be chewing on like fondant all day, but
Yeah.
like the cake, the buttercream, everything's from scratch.
Oh
I
my
make, it's
gosh.
gotta taste good. You can't just look
Oh,
good.
So she
geez.
didn't just throw some colored pencils in there. She handmade colored pencils.
We're
where if
definitely
you
throwing
look
this up
at
on
it-
YouTube for sure. They'll see it.
If you look at it, you think that's a real colored pencil. I can grab it and draw on paper.
I'll give you an example. Clearly, that log is cake, right? Like it's cake. But when I looked at that mug that you made for me, the detail in the mug, and then the detail in the cake in the log underneath it, so clearly, I thought that you had put it on a log. Like upon further inspection, you would know it wasn't a pencil, right? That's my point. But you have to further inspect to find out, because if you look at it, you go, she put a pencil on there. And she's going down to the detail. Like there was etching in the pencils that she recreated. We're
Yes,
talking about
yeah.
you. We're basically begging. Tell us tell us what you did. And this is unbelievable. We're saying
Yeah.
she, like you're like off in Alaska somewhere. But yeah, please go ahead.
So let me say, it wasn't perfect. DJ sharpens his pencils so beautifully, and I couldn't make them that sharp, but like
That's not a typical standard, to be clear, that the pencils are sharpened to the same level.
they're immaculate.
Yeah.
So I made these pencils out of fondant. Had to trim them up with some sharp knives to make the points, the tips as pointy as I could, and then I had to paint the like beige part. There's like wood. Pencils are made out of wood, so you got the color part, and then I etched in whatever Micro Pro or something. There's a brand on it. There's a number or whatever. So I did that in edible silver paint.
And they were pretty to scale, right?
Yeah,
They were,
yeah. Yep. And then, so the notebook was not to scale. One of his pictures that I used, I made it on, I replicated it on wafer paper. It's got to be edible in my book. So
And what was on the sketch?
yeah, it was like Mickey, and I don't know if the other character was like
This was
something.
a sketch that he made.
He made this sketch, yeah. Mickey and Mickey's friend, and they're like, I forget. I think one of them's giving the peace sign, but it was really good, sketch. And I even like signed his initials, which kind of felt weird doing that, but had to make it exact
Yeah.
in my book.
Well, to have somebody be, what's the word? Forged. That's a big deal for an artist. Once you're big
Yeah.
enough to have your signature forged, then it's
Yeah.
good. And then why did you choose wafer paper? I know you said edible, but why didn't you just put it on the
I could have put
design
it on
the cake?
fondant. My original idea was I'm gonna make like cut out like hundreds of pieces of wafer paper and make it like a real notebook. But then
And
I
you
was like,
would.
yeah. And I was like, that's going to take ages. So I did the wafer paper, but then I did some fondant underneath that. And I etched lines into the fondant to make it look like the pieces of paper. So,
But what was the quality of the wafer paper?
the wafer paper, is pretty smooth. You have to be careful though. If you put too much food coloring on it, it does alter, it's not as flat as it should be. But
it looked like a well-traveled notebook paper. I mean, it
Yeah.
legitimately looked like actual paper that he could have sketched on.
yeah,
It's so awesome. And I think I just want to draw attention again to the thoughtfulness piece that Paul, that you brought up, which is, let's just track this journey here for a second. DJ says, I'm interested to his mother. I'm interested in art. Okay. So he expresses his desire. She immediately turns that to action. She messages me. She starts messaging Sarah. Like, there's things that she begins to do. Then we are now thinking about DJ and how we can support DJ. So I'm over here on one side doing much less than you. I'm just doing like tech things. But the point is, he's probably got 5 or 6 people because of the thoughtfulness of his mom.
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6 of us, people like us, thinking of him and wanting him to succeed. And then you do this incredible thing that shows him not only how cool his stuff is, but also shows him what's possible in the art space, because artists start out with like, kids watch cartoons, so they want to make cartoons. As they're exposed to more types of art, they begin to think, well, maybe I could be an architect. Maybe I could be a 3D and gaming designer. Maybe I could be a baker. And so we're beginning to expose him to, and this kid, all he did was say, I want to be an artist. And that thoughtfulness has just woven. And now he's the topic of a segment on a podcast that artists are going to listen to. And it's just like, it's so easy to underestimate how big each of those moments are for somebody. You know what I mean,
That's true.
Paul? Like you're nodding about that. Like, do you get kind of what I'm saying there?
Mind blown.
No, not mind blown, not a profound moment. What I mean is reminds me a little bit of our discussion that we were having around different people and how they find, like, the question you asked me was, how do you get better? But what I thought of immediately was, I tried to involve myself in the life of people who could make me better. I started to befriend podcasters and things like that. And that's what reminded me of that when you asked that, how do you get better? And DJ is passively receiving that benefit, and I hope every listener thinks, man, I want to buy something from DJ now, or I want to buy something, and also Sarah and maybe me. And, it's just really cool how this stuff works together.
Mm-hmm.
And on the short end, that's my dream for Renaissance, is that the value of people running into each other and rubbing up against each other with their giftedness and their passion compounds to be greater than, the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool. So I think one thing that I'd like to talk about a little bit is, you're new to this, but if you went on a show or competition, you would not be new. That'd be the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they would say all the time. What? You just started 6 months ago? But you wouldn't pick out your stuff as new. Can we go back a ways to kind of what we were talking about beforehand, about that early journey and some of the difficulties that are maybe unavoidable, maybe avoidable? Like, I don't know, how far back to Paul, you are one of the best storytellers. Could you pick a starting point for us as kind of iconic moments for Sarah? Where would you start this story?
Her origin story.
That's what I'm asking
So,
for, is her
yeah.
origin story.
As I shared before, Sarah is very smart, and let's just say she never got a B from kindergarten all the way through undergrad. Never got a B. Maybe an A minus, but never a B. So there was a lot of expectation, understandably so, for her to become something special.
Especially with a heavy academic focus with grades like those.
Coming from a medical family too. I've got uncles who are doctors, anesthesiologists, ophthalmologists. My brother's one. He, his wife. A lot of people to look up to, and it was great. It was, but kind of felt like I should do that too. I need,
Was that a fight for you early on? Were you early going, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this?
My relatives are great people, and I was like, wow, I want to be like them. And also, like, there's some prestige and money comes with that, and I could travel and, live comfortably. So yeah, I never really fought that early on. I remember when I was an undergrad, just kind of thinking things were getting hard, and like I told my mom, I was like, maybe I could just, be an English teacher. Not that that's not hard. Like maybe I could just do something not science related.
You were looking for outs from.
Yeah,
What were you looking for outs from?
Well,
What,
I
was
had
it pressure
I have a
or-
biology degree, and I just kind of was done with the sciences for a little bit, and just kind of I love the arts. I've always loved, I would paint, sketch, just do little things here and there to express myself. And I told my mom also like, if I could just like be an artist or a painter, and my parents are great. But she realizes, certain practicalities and, how are you going to pay for your art supplies? Being an artist is hard and, can be difficult to make a living. And, so I kind of just rode the train going to, I ended up getting into dental school, went to dental school for 2 years. It's a 4-year program. And halfway through, I had to leave. I went through some difficult things mentally with anxiety and depression, and just kind of realized, after a bit of time of healing, that a lot of my identity was wrongly placed in what I was going to do and who I was going to be, and my job. And I think coming to Calvary was a really big help. Talking with Pastor Eric and other people along the way, that that's just pointing to truth, and my identity should not be in what I do, but it's in Christ, and that's all that matters ultimately.
Man, I really resonate with that story, and we could talk for months about just what God's done in our lives and his goodness and kindness to us, and undeserved. And one part of that story, you bring up mental illness, and I think that that's something that, gratefully is becoming a mainstream topic now. And I'm finally learning names for things I've struggled with for a really long time. I'm like, oh, there's a name for that. I'm 36, and I'm just learning that like lots of people go through that, and that's real and it's normal. And I'm sure it's similar for you, that and when you're in the moment, when you're in the thick of it, you feel alone is one of the only, I think alone is, for me at least, I don't want to speak for you or others, but alone is probably the most true word that you can think of. So we're going to try to get through this without getting too emotional. But I think what is underestimated, and feel free to share here, either of the two of you, what's underestimated on that topic of mental illness is it can be seasonal, it can be chronic your whole life. There's so many variables, but it's your brain. And like, your whole operating system's up there. Everything that's running is running off of that. And so when things aren't either normal for society, or they tend to push you a certain way and you're not aware of it, it's your operating system. You really don't have a shot until you understand what's happening and what's true. And so I'm really grateful for you guys. And we bumped into each other both in the thick of a very difficult time. And it was just like, I wasn't even out of it yet, And so it was really important. I think he used that meeting greatly, but it wasn't me. You know what I mean? I don't think I talked to you guys for a year after that. You know what I mean? And so it's just such an important topic. I'm going to be meeting with my good friend Corey Hubbell actually tomorrow, who's this incredibly accomplished artist. And that's a topic that he's passionate about as well. People who feel a lot often move to the arts, but people who feel a lot are often at risk. It's tough, especially if you have a strong intellectual drive. Those strong emotions begin to cycle through that strong intellectual drive, either upward or downward, and it's very difficult. So anyway, I kind of got lost in that topic for a moment. It's probably something that you've talked about more than I've talked about, and so it's just new to me these last couple years. The scary thing is when you look, there's a mental illness section. I'll keep it on a lighter note. There's a mental illness section on the web that's similar to WebMD. So like, you go on WebMD and you definitely have cancer, right? Like, no matter what it is. Just so you guys know, if you go online and you Google mental illness, like, you're gonna be a dark sociopath. Like there's these like chronic characterizations they'll put you in for clickbait. So don't go online. Talk to your pastor. Talk to your whoever you are talking to, and work through that. Paul, do you have any thoughts on that? Here's the question: do you have any thoughts that fit? Because you probably have 100,000 like I do.
He was so great through all of that.
Yeah, so specific to Sarah, I mean, we all look for what we can do in life, and we aspire to something, and we want to find fulfillment. And conventional wisdom for Sarah's case was that she should become a doctor. She should become a dentist. In that, she'll find fulfillment, happiness, financial stability. And she was on that path for many years. And now she's a stay-at-home mom slash entrepreneur working on baking cakes. Conventional wisdom wouldn't have said the girl who got straight A's should be baking cakes at her home and designing them in her basement on a ping pong table. That's not conventional wisdom. But in doing that, Sarah has found fulfillment, happiness, joy. When she was aspiring to be a dentist, she was dealing with imposter syndrome. You would think she would deal with that in this space because she's baking, didn't have very much experience.
On a technical note, she was probably more qualified to be a dentist than a baker. Like on a technical qualifications note, like from the imposter syndrome, it's backwards.
Yeah, she should be dealing with a lot of anxiety and stress and feeling like an imposter, but somehow it doesn't have that debilitating effect, and instead she's able to tap into her creativity and find joy.
Well, in your technical intensity, the things that would happen in any medical, because dental was the path, but you could have gone any direction. There's a technical ability that you have to execute on. And so there's a major minor situation happening here where people often look at your giftedness and say, that should be the major thing you do with your life all the time. But really what you're doing is you're using those things that you worked hard at and that you got throughout your life as the minor. You're living out of the creative space, out of truth and out of, your relationship with the Lord. And then your minor you're using is like a sledgehammer compared to a tap hammer, because you've got this person who's living out of like this fulfilling, enjoyable experience. And the little thing that gives you an edge happens to be that massive ability that you have that could have made you a doctor. And it's so cool to watch you use that level of intensity. Like your recipes, you don't play around with your recipes. Like these cakes have to taste good. They have to look good. And I just love that. I just absolutely love that. And I think that's something to consider also. There was 2 points that I wanted to ask you about because that came up. One was when your family member said to you, asked you questions, what about? The implied, those are really good questions, to be honest. Like you have to figure those things out if you're going to be an artist for a living. The implied answer to those questions was hypothetical, and it's not actually there. We just all answer in our head. Oh, you're right. That's probably a bad idea. That's not what those questions are. Those questions are, what about the things it's going to take to be successful? You could ask the same questions about being a dentist. Like there's a ton of barriers to becoming a dentist. So when people ask you, if you're young right now and they say, what about, write those things down. Those are just things you got to figure out. They're not reasons to quit. Mm-hmm. They're just things you got to do. It's, it's just so weird. When we hear those questions, we go, all right. And that's not how it is, because all those questions she asked had to be answered, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to pay for your supplies. Mm-hmm. You have to do all that stuff. Yeah. And the other thing I actually wanted to ask you about was, that was a fake ask. I just said some stuff. Sorry. Working on it. First time in the show, 38 minutes in. I usually do the whole show, so I'm getting better. Let's go a different direction here. What are some of the challenges that say it's art or whatever in your world? We'll talk about the unique challenges, but what are the guaranteed challenges for, say, someone who is managing a household or managing a business while they're doing their side hustle? They're managing a main thing, and then this is their minor thing. What are some things they're going to run into, guaranteed?
Yeah.
Paul can jump into, because you experience the same limitations she does.
Yeah, well, right now I have 2 children under, one's 3, one's 1. And so that presents obvious challenges when I'm trying to bake. Sometimes I'm measuring 1/8 of a teaspoon of whatever salt while I have a baby on my hip because, Verity's a little bit dependent on me right now. So that's challenging when I have to focus. But, family time is also very important to me. And I want to make sure that, what I'm doing here with the cakes isn't taking away too much from that, taking up too much energy, mind space. And, I want to be able to go to metro parks and enjoy that time with them. And I realized, my kids are only little for so long. So that's something that's kind of, a little bit heavy on my heart. I want to make sure that I'm a good mom, a good wife, discipling my children. To me, that's way more important than making these cakes. So there's, a level of balance that I have to find. I deal with some sleep issues because when I'm thinking of these cakes and how I'm going to do them, I'm laying in bed often just kind of running things through my head. And
the downside of passion, I'm dead serious. Like that's very real. Maybe you just can we take a little bit of a detour stop on that point for a second? We were talking about challenges. Help me get back there, Paul. But what are some ways that you have found, and maybe you haven't found any yet, maybe you're in the middle of it. What are some ways that you found to be able to be at rest? Because the same problem that makes it so you can't sleep is the same problem that makes us not present with our kids when we're at the park, because we're thinking through something and we're having trouble detaching from that thought. What have you found to be helpful there or not helpful?
Yeah, well, a huge blessing has been, Paul's mom, my mom will come sometimes if I'm really, overloaded with work. And that's just, they're the unsung heroes. But I think just realizing my limitations and realizing, okay, I should only be doing 1 or 2 cakes a week. There was one week I sent out 6 cakes, and that was just crazy. So I think realizing that I have to set limits, and it's so hard for me to say no, but I need to learn to do that. And I've even prayed like, Lord, please let me only get the requests that I should be doing, because, I get a request. I really want to do it. It's an opportunity, but, we only have so much time and energy. And
we talked a little bit about, that's exactly right. Like those limitations are really, really hard because they're good limitations. They're not begrudging limitations. Like we're just like, man, we want to bless people, but not at the expense of blessing our family. Like it's a good limitation. It's not like, oh, my job that I hate, I have to go to, and I only have an hour before I have to go to the next job that I have to go to. It's a good thing. I think we had a brief conversation about segmenting a little bit more. I don't know. Did you guys have more time to think about that at all? Rather than saying I'm baking at large, breaking it into smaller sections, does that feel relevant or not really?
For me as a person, I kind of just jumble everything together. I'm not big in. Paul's better at compartmentalizing things. Do you have anything to say, Paul?
So there are success stories, and then we're still trying to figure it out, and we're not even really thinking about it. We're just living day by day. So compartmentalizing would definitely be a struggle that Sarah hasn't found a solution to yet.
Got it. But that would be an area that would benefit you probably in terms of, we talked about just knowing the schedule. It would also benefit you, Sarah, when it's time to think about it, in the area of knowing how to properly set limits on the amount of work. So if you have sections that the baking takes this much time and it doesn't require me to be there, the mixing takes this much time and does with this level of attention. When you know those compartmentalizations, you know what units of availability go away when you have house guests, and you know which availability units come back when you have the house to yourself because the kids are with. So that would be something down the road to think of. But again, we talked about this. This is one of those rapid explosions. Like me, there is a whole list of things that I know I have to do better on this show. There's probably about 55 items that I could show you. There's about 6 or 7 that ruin an episode. And I'm working on those right now. And that's kind of what you're talking about, where you're just like, I'm still figuring out my thing. I can't really segment my thing until I know my thing. But yeah, I think also the compartmentalizing might help you with doing what I have learned in my, 15 years or whatever of 14 and a half of struggling through this creative as a job, is some sort of evening recap really helps me a lot. And so just an inventory of every job, where it's at and what the next step is, helps me. So if I had like 4 weddings to edit, 3 commercial jobs, and a consulting job the following day, writing down every single project, where it is and what tomorrow will look like, has helped me a lot to get some rest. It also helps me when I'm finishing one segment not to begin to panic about what the next segment's happening. And so, for example, I have a really good list, but it's not organized on the show of what gear I need to bring. And I'm going to have my assistant make me a compartmentalized list of every item that I can check off when I pack it, because I have severe anxiety that I'm going to forget something. So that might be something to consider. But
yeah,
again,
lists do help. I
Yeah.
have a little list of things to do and to buy, and crossing off, what I've done helps
Yeah.
mentally too.
yeah, but you got to get some sleep. So that's a
Yeah.
big one. That's a really big one. And that's normally something people don't do till 5-6 years in. So you're not behind, but it is something to consider. So so what kind of cakes have you done? Like now you've done a fair number. You're now throttled. You're at the point where you have more requests than actual cakes. You can't do any more. So this show is not going to be a big promotion currently of getting you more business because you just can't. We're talking about how cool you are and what you've done so far. Of all these cakes that you've done, what are some of the crazy? Like I heard something about like Michelin Man, Trump horses, and Thanksgiving turkeys and all that. What are some things that you've done? I want to hear from both of you. Which ones have really stood out to you?
Yeah. So starting off, Verity's cake kind of started this whole thing off. She had a little smash cake that I did.
Verity, our daughter.
Verity, our daughter.
And she had congenital heart issues. When she was 3 days old, she had to have open heart surgery to have a pacemaker installed. And so her 1-year birthday was very special to us. So Sarah wanted to make a very special cake.
Yeah. So, and I just wanted something sweet. So I did a bunch of, floral work, piped some buttercream roses and peonies. And so, I have my floral department, which, a lot of people really like, just really pretty. Right here you have, some blue roses and some petals falling off the side. And then I have some, I've started working with, fondant, modeling chocolate, the whole Michelin Man thing. There's somebody who, her sister, really great person, friend of mine, she lives out of state now. She's like, hey, can you make my sister this cake? She loves sports. She does Muay Thai. And I checked out her sister's Instagram. She's done Muay Thai in Thailand even. So I was working on modeling chocolate, trying to get this person to do this, crazy kick in the air, doing another person defending that kick. And it was just not working out time after time. This man who's supposed to be like strong is just looking like this squishy Michelin Man person.
So when you say Michelin Man and you put Michelin Man in my notes here, that wasn't actually what you were making.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
A very athletic, toned Muay Thai
It turned into a birthday cake about me instead of a Muay Thai expert.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how many tries did it take?
Oh, gosh. I just gave up after, maybe 4 or 5 tries that night, ripping the chocolate off.
And 4 or 5 tries are not like flipping a coin. Like these are
no.
significant time. Like that's a very devastating thing.
Yeah.
Each try is kind of devastating from what you've told me.
And I wasn't like trying to change my tactic. I was kind of just trying to do it all in one piece. And then the next day with the fresh brain, I was like, let me try to segment this. I'm going to make his legs. Then I'm going to make his torso and his arms. And that worked out so much better. It just worked. And I was like, wow, okay.
Do you
that's
think
learning
with
point.
unlimited tries, you would have got it that day? Like you were degrading at that point,
yeah,
right?
I was just
That's
down
what
on
I
myself.
mean. Like getting to a point where from a segment standpoint, you're like, okay, I've hit this moment. There's nothing good coming out of me here. I'm going to leave it here. And tomorrow I know exactly where I left off. That's been so huge for me. Juggling so many different things where it's just like, nope, I'm done. And I'll do that in a meeting. Like, and I'll get fog brain or I'll start to feel frustrated, like I can't communicate. And I'll go, I've literally hit my synapse. Have you guys heard that before? That you get a limited number of synapse fires in your brain for decisions. Have you heard that?
No.
This is new.
They've done a bunch of studies on this. That's how I validate that it's true. I just say bunch of studies. Some guy said, no, but that decision fatigue is one of the most predictable things that you can do in your life. And so what happens is every decision you make is one synapse firing in your brain, and you have a limited number of those each day. And so what people who are earthly successful, people who lots of money, prestige, whatever, almost all of them do incredible amounts of work to reduce the number of decisions they make, including what am I going to wear today? Where am I going to go? They build those routines so that by 11 o'clock, they've made almost no decisions. They get to work, they fire off till 4 or 5, and then they get home and they finish. And so that's what that fog is. If you're an artist, a consultant, a techie, whatever, that's what that fog is. If you've decided too many things before your day even starts. So that's something I've been trying to help Ashley with at home because she manages the workload primarily of the kids and getting them out to school. And she does so many things. The kids are asking her questions and she's deciding. And I'm like, you guys are borrowing something from your mom that you can't give back. And so by 3 o'clock, she's just fried. And so on days where you're trying to be creative, you want to have your outfit already picked out. You want to have your goods already out. You want to have your materials out for the next day. And you want your first decision to be a creative decision. So something to think about.
That's a good point.
That's why you see Zuckerberg in the same shirt every day. Warren Buffett owns the same car. He takes the same route. He reads the same paper. That's why they do that, so that their best decision-making time is at the times when they're making their decisions. So something to think about. But anyway, you had the Michelin Man. You had Trump cake?
Yeah.
Trump horse?
No. Okay.
What is this?
First of all, I want to say I've already decided early on I'm going to avoid like any type of political kink. So don't ask me for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just keep it light here.
I'll literally bleep it. Like if somebody starts making political comments, I'll just bleep it and start playing
make a
music.
Trump cake. Somebody requested a horse cake for their son, and I had this round cake. It's like a dome, little mini dome, and I was trying to make like the whole horse body, and I'm putting like legs on it, a little bit of head, the head, little arms, and it just looked like, before the head was on it, it just looked like a Thanksgiving turkey, like with the legs. I'll have to show you a picture of it, but I was like, this is just not gonna fly. Like, so I ended up, scrapping that and turning this dome just into the head of the horse and not the whole body. And then, I piped some like the hair, the little tuft of hair on the top, and the way I piped it, it was just like, it was a Trump
spitting image.
It was Trump's hair on this horse.
I'll be honest, the last 4 years or so, this isn't a political statement. We've all kind of, no matter what your opinion is, have had him on the mind. Like it's been impossible not to. So I think you're subconscious. I think even if the Michelin Man would have turned into Trump, maybe, I'm just saying, non-political statement. He's just been at the forefront of our minds.
Yeah. And at that point I was like, I've already worked so much on this and I have to like give it to, the mom. And it wasn't bad. It was just, it could have been better with, the hair and all that. But that was one time I was like, I'm done.
What do you think when we look at I just can't get that out of my mind. Any question I ask now is going to have a Trump horse on my brain. It's just this infectious image. So as you're talking about some of these things that you're kind of laughing at, your iterations, obviously when it ended, it looked great. But you're kind of laughing. We're laughing about how funny the failures look. I've done that. I've tried to be creative with a shot on a photo, and I do a wide angle shot for the scene. And then I notice in the corner that Aunt Miriam's body is 16 times larger than her head because she just happened to be there. And, you can't undeliver them. So I'm like, well, maybe Aunt Miriam said she didn't want to see any photos, just so you guys know. She didn't want to see any. But I've done things like that, and they're funny, but obviously not sustainable. You want to get better over time, less iterations. What do you think the percentage of your time that you spend is on, let's do a pie chart here. So preparation of the job, as an example, that's when you haven't touched anything yet. You're just thinking it through, making sure it's a good fit. And then the actual technical execution of it, research, what's kind of the pie chart, delivery, finishing, baking? What's kind of the pie chart for you of time? You don't have to use all those categories. I'm just giving some examples.
Baking's probably like a fifth of the time, if that.
You're pretty confident by the time you get there. Like that's the mix it right, put it in the oven.
And that still takes a lot of time. You have to, it's not just baking. You have, all the ingredients you have to buy. You have to cut out the shape, parchment paper so it doesn't stick to the bottom. There's a lot that goes in before you actually stick the cake in the oven. But then you have, the whole creative, thinking about the design and all of that. That's probably, I don't know, anywhere to a quarter, a third.
So Sarah makes only custom cakes. She doesn't have like, this is my portfolio of 10, 20
nobody's
cakes
reordering the cake.
Someone says, I want Hagrid's Hut. And she has to research Hagrid's Hut and figure out exactly the material she's going to use.
Is that just because you're new? Like, or do you really not want to remake cakes? Because like everything's new. Your first 5 cakes are always going to be new like that.
Yeah. I assume later on down the road I'm going to have like, another Spider-Man cake or whatever. But I really enjoy when things are new. I do realize though that
I'm going to push back on you. So tell me what's true. If I came to you and said, I'll give you the right amount of money for a Hagrid's Hut, would you say, because you're in control of your business, would you say, let's mix it up. I'll do something like that. Or would you say, yeah, I'm happy to do the same exact cake replica?
I would probably want to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you gave me like $1,000, sure, I'll do anything you want.
Just so anybody listening to Renaissance Agency, by the way, selfishly, my goal is I want Sarah making, and if we have time to talk more about this in a later episode, we will. Personally, my vision, I haven't shared this with them. My vision is that Sarah only does very large, very beautiful, very incredible, very thoughtful, very expensive cakes for companies and stuff that I want to, not only, but I want her to do that. So I haven't sold her on that yet. And I don't think she's going to say yes at this point, but that's what I want to do. I want a big company to have a big event, and it's got a bunch of creative elements to it, and she makes it, and it's like stupid expensive because they got a bunch of venture money, and we're just going to use that on cake partially. So
Yeah, that would be cool. But a lot of my joy also comes from, making people's birthdays.
Little
whatever.
Harland.
Yeah, special.
Yes.
And so
I know. That's why I said it's a sale. I got to figure out how to get you to do some of those because you're so happy doing what you're doing now. So you said then creative time, there's two parts there. There's like the design, and then there's the modified design as it gets going, right?
yeah. So, I'm spending a lot of time either, scrolling through Instagram, getting ideas, just laying in my bed thinking about how I'm going to do things. I do most of my creative thinking just in bed as I'm trying to sleep, which is not good. But, and then there's the whole execution that, in and of itself takes a lot of time, figuring out what, materials I'm going to use, if it's going to be fondant, all buttercream, model
Sounds like
chocolate.
you're an architect.
I have to,
Literally,
like
this is crazy.
Yeah, there's sculpting, there's piping, there's so many different cool techniques out there. There's so many that I want to do that I haven't done yet. It's just amazing. That's what I love about it. There's just this whole new world. Of
Let's go.
cake.
Your line. She said a whole new world, and then the guy sings.
No,
Okay. All right.
that
Yeah.
wasn't what I was going to bring up. I told Sarah, I'm like, if you want to make things easier on yourself, you could specialize. She makes these, there's a floral cake right here, and that takes very little effort. Creatively, she could pump these out like it's nobody's business, where it wouldn't take as much planning,
Yep.
preparation,
Mhm.
decorating.
But no less expertise, though. So it's certainly not bringing the value down, but her time investment would be different. But her expertise and the happiness of the client is still high.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
she could brand herself as the flower cake lady,
Yeah.
and it would be very easy. But at the same time, she doesn't want to be pumping out these flower cakes.
Well, and you already walked away from the medical field in terms of something that you know is not a good fit for you. Certainly, you're not going to bring that bad fit mindset back into, like Paul's saying. Certainly, you're not going to do the medical field version of cakes. That doesn't make sense. Just choose
Right.
money over fulfillment.
And
Yeah.
thankfully, God has blessed my situation such that I'm not having to, put food on the table with, this cake money.
Cake money. That's a good name for your sugar daddy over there. No, but you're getting paid for this, and you could scale this into a very successful bakery within 3 months. Like this is the irony of me talking to you. Is like the path to a successful bakery, earthly success, money, those sort of things, is very short for you. You could do that very quickly, very little effort, do it from your house straight to a space, have people working for you, and be very profitable very quickly. But that's not what you want to do. You don't have that vision in your mind that that's what you want to do right now. And you could turn that on at any point, but right now you're staying true to what you want to do, which is this sweet spot that you're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the irony is profitability. People are so hungry for profitability, and it's important, especially if your family's suffering because of it. That's important.
Mhm.
Time and money is draining. But the reality is, if you focus like you're focusing on greatness and doing great work, profitability is just always there. You can always turn it on whenever you want. But if you chase profitability too early and you do flower cakes like Paul was talking about in a way that you're not happy with, now we can talk about some ways that might be kind of fun. You could do a bouquet season where
Mhm.
literally you release 25 cakes on a weekend with different beautiful bouquets, and it's an amazing photo shoot, and all 25 cakes get bought because it was fast, it was crazy profitable, infusion of cash. We can do things like that. But you don't want to chase profitability at the expense of this really cool thing. Like, I don't know what this podcast is yet. It's not the right time to start promoting it. Like, I don't know what it is. I'm still working on it. And you're kind of in a similar spot. It's not the right time to start promoting it yet. Right? Like,
Yeah.
you're already too busy
Yeah.
and you're already doing what you love. Nothing's broken.
Right. Yeah.
Paul, yeah. What do you think about that? What were you saying there? I think you were the last one I cut off, most recent.
I keep having the word, I think of Subway. I don't like the subs at Subway.
It's currently the cheapest franchise you can buy, by the way, which fits because the sandwiches fit that. But yeah, go ahead. You
And
think of
Sarah
Subway.
might be more profitable if she became the Subway of cakes,
Yeah.
but that would hurt her artist soul. And I appreciate her artist soul.
Just, I'm going to agree with that and add a caveat to it and tell me if you agree with what I'm saying. You're obligated to because I just agreed with you socially. You have to
Sure.
agree. What's funny is I remember distinctly cutting you off a little bit ago. Sarah and I both started talking at the same time, and your word started with SH. So all I heard was shh. But you were gracious about it. But it was a good reminder that the shush actually fit. It was an accident. But we often go to the extremes, right? Like Sarah is not going to, you're 100% correct. So there's Subway here. There's completely custom, no sense of money or scalability or anything over here, which is the prototype stage. Like when I made HH Boogie, the first prototype was $700, my cost. And then they sold for $99 at the end of it. So there's a prototype stage. It's expensive. It's arduous. It takes too much time. And then you eventually scale things. So Subway is one version, and then there's what we're doing now. There are incremental steps in between those things. So for example, like I said, if you wanted to literally just practice your flowers and just be creative and that's all you wanted to do, you make 25 cakes like this and you just artistically hone in on what you love about flowers. Now you have this massive group of things that took you the same amount of time as my cake. And selling 25 cakes while experimenting and learning ain't bad. That would be pretty sick. Like that'd be some money. So that would be fun because that would go toward your project. You could buy more spaces. So there are versions in the middle, which is possible too. And that's kind of where I operate, is in that middle stage. And so that's why I'm always like perking up at opportunity, but I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to be like, this is your passion, your vision, but my excitement definitely bleeds over with what's possible. Hey guys, we're going to take a break. You want to talk a little more? Yeah. Sarah, are you done? You want to talk a little more?
I can talk more.
Thank you so much for coming on. This is definitely going to be aired very soon, and we've got a lot more to talk about, but thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming. We're going to take a little break, get some water, use the restroom, and we'll see everybody in a bit.